elections and still you're not winning elections? What does that say?
It's a very good, I'm glad you asked this question. And here's my answer to that. My response is very clear. I believe as a state, it is our constitutional responsibility to be able to provide support, resources for those who don't have any. Now, whether it's the US or Europe, everybody has an affirmative program. You have food coupons, you have subsidies, you have all sorts of financial benefits for people who are not in the mainstream. But it should be targeted, it should be monitored. One should not use that as a platform to garner votes. But once you're in government, and I have to take you back, from 2004 to 14, when we had UP 1 and 2, 145 million people were lifted from abject poverty, above the poverty line. So I'm all for supporting and targeted support of all people who need our resources, education, health, food subsidy, electricity. I think we owe to those people. But it can't be a race to the bottom. It can't be that I'm giving 200 units and you give 400 units. That's not how it is. And there are many political parties who don't have the governance historical record of delivery. Our party has been in power for a few decades. We've been in opposition. We talk with responsibility. And I can tell you one thing, whatever election promises the Congress party makes, it's done with a thorough due diligence of what the resources are, what we can manage and what we're able to deliver. There are some people who are getting into this competitive game and are promising things which then becomes problematic post-elections. So I'm against that. But I think people who deserve the support and help of the government should get that support.
Okay, then let me ask you, your leader, the leader of the Congress party, or the biggest face of the Congress party today, Rahul Gandhi, he's been talking about caste-based reservations. He wants to expand it beyond the 50% limit legally prescribed today. He talks about jitni abadi utna hak, that it should be on the basis of the proportion that one has in population. And the idea is, of course, that the OBCs and others are much larger in population than 50% of the Indian current population. If we go that route, the direct question that comes to mind is what happens to merit then? Because the young of the country, the youth of the country, if there is one thing they tell politicians again and again, and us when we go to the field, is that they want an India which runs on merit, not on किस परिवार से आते हो, आपके माता पिता कौन है. Dynasty, they don't like reservations as much. They want merit. They want to be standing on their own feet. So then I don't understand, how does your vision of what the youth need go hand in hand with the jitni abadi utna hak, or more reservations than we already have?
I think I've understood your question. No, so let me start by saying that I am fully in agreement with you that we have to have a competitive merit-based system in our country. There's no question about it. But on the flip side, if the argument you made, I have only this to say. There are people who have not been able to enter the mainstream, who are on the fringes of our society, absolute fringes, economically, socially, subjugated to centuries of suppression. And when I say, and when the Congress party says we must have a head count, it is only to make sure that we have the adequate budgetary allocations to those sections who need it. After the survey is done, maybe we'll find that some people are getting it, but they don't deserve it. Move that. Be scientific. Unless we know the extent of the population or the geographical area which they inhabit, how do I know how much money to give? And incidentally, you said 50%. Who said 50%? Why not 40 or 55? This limit is arbitrary because it is said, some decades ago. India has changed. I think we must have a head count to see the socio-economical background of everybody in this country, and then take a considered view of how much to allocate where. It's very scientific. Now we have technology, we have bank accounts, we have direct benefit transfer, we have technology at our disposal to figure out which areas, which sections, and which part of our society needs that support. Right now it's done ad hoc. It's done, if I run a government, I'll say I support this one, you come to power, you support that one. There is no scientific basis of allocating budgets, money, schemes, programs, and there is no scientific way of monitoring that. All we're saying is, let the truth come out, let us have a full head count, and based on that, post-discussion, do a merit-based system of how do you allocate resources. Right now, resource allocation is done at the whim and fancy of a political party or a government. There is no data to back it. Every time we have gone to court, court always says, please give empirical evidence of why you want to do this scheme. or reservation, for example. And I think there's no harm. There are about a dozen states who have already crossed the 50% limit. So 50% limit is something that was, put down by some court decades ago. There is no reason for us not to have a head count and then take a reality check as to how much we need. Perhaps we need less. And if we have to cross a limit in some areas, let's do that. Let's not be bound by history and legacy and not be scientific in our approach. So to your argument that this will kill merit, I don't believe it. I think people who have merit have enough space and they should get space. But those who have been left out in the mainstream for decades and centuries do need a level playing field.
No, possibly that 50% mark was set because at least there will be 50% merit-based and 50% reservation-based. Maybe it was more palatable for people to accept that rather than a 70-80% reservation. But I'll ask you very quickly. You're saying caste survey, do it, get the head count and then allocate resources accordingly. That's fine in its own regard. But are you also for increasing reservation limit to 60, 70, 80%?
There are areas in the country where 90% population is tribals and Dalits. Where do they go? I mean, I think what we should do actually is to make the supply so abundant that the demand matches it. Right now, there is less number of seats available, less jobs available, and that's why there is a hue and cry of how many seats we can give. If you make the supply abundant, if you put resources in creating jobs, if you increase the number of seats for engineering, for college, for education, we will not have this problem. I mean, we have to work in tandem. And when you say that 50% should be merit, I think it should be 100% merit. But what about a large chunk of our country that has not moved as quickly as some of us have? What about those people who don't have access to money, resource, connections, who can't get to a college, who can't get education, and are living in abject poverty? And this country cannot grow and get its place under the sun in the global world unless that half of our country is brought to the front line. And the way to do it is not giving money, is giving opportunity. And I'm asking for level playing field, but you cannot ignore those who have all access, studying in the best schools and colleges, competing with people in villages who have hardly anything. So you have to have a balance. But having a head count, how does it hurt? Let's get the facts out. Let's not do, tera, mera, I know better, you know better. Let's get scientific proof of what the numbers are, and then we'll figure out how to move forward.
Okay, fair enough. Head count at least can be a start for a rational debate. I have to ask you one final question, Sachin, before I let you go. We're talking about the youth. I don't want to make it too personal, but, there are several leaders of your age bracket who have lost the Congress party recently. Your fellow former congressman, there was a time when there were, movement linked to you as well. Why is it that the Congress party, your party, is failing to retain its young talent?
Well, I think just to add to your comment, we have lost some talent who's not very young also. We have Captain Amrinder Singh, we have Ghulam Nabi Azad, we had Ashok Chavan, and we had tons of other people. So people who are not, don't have the stomach for a fight will do what they have to do. Some people have personal compulsions, and this government of the day is using every resource at their disposal, whether it's enforcement directorate, CBI, police, income tax to subjugate. And once people cross over, suddenly they become blame-free and become the best people in the world. That's between them and the BJP. I have nothing to add. All I can say is that those who are committed for the party, who believe in the ideology and will fight till the end, those are the kind of workers we want to cultivate. And today in the session at AICC in Ahmedabad, we are giving a clarion call for this year to be the year of organization, to reach out to the blocks, to the panchayats, to a mass contact program, door-to-door campaign, to galvanize the supporters, and people need a strong opposition. We have been put in the opposition, but for 4.5 years, I can assure you that the Congress party, our workers and our leaders will be on the ground, voicing the voice of the people, raising those issues and making this government accountable. Kaun aa raha hai, kaun ja raha hai, it's part of politics. I will make no comments, but I think ultimately people are the best judge. Whether anyone makes a decision, good or bad, you and I can't make a decision. The people of India will decide whether this is right or wrong.
All right. I do appreciate you joining us, Sachin Pilot. Thanks a lot for speaking here on Rising Bharat. We look forward to more stories coming in, not just for the youth that the Congress party will be connecting with, but also, of course, your state of Rajasthan as well. All the very best, and thanks a lot for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for being such a lovely, patient audience. I will invite my colleague Christine back. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Pilot, if you're hearing this, for this most candid and very engaging conversation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, up next, allow me to welcome a remarkable leader and a visionary who is helping shape the future of the global economy. Mr. Boj Brenda, the President and CEO of World Economic Forum. As the CEO of the World Economic Forum, Mr. Brenda has played a pivotal role in bringing together leaders from business, government, academia, and civil society to address the world's most urgent issues. In this very special session, we'll explore what it means for countries, for companies, and even individuals to chart a successful economic course towards becoming global superstars. What are the trends driving growth? What challenges must we overcome? And how can we prepare for a future of unprecedented opportunities? Mr. Brenda is joining us virtually today, and he will be in conversation with Shireen Bhan. Shireen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to have you here with us at the Rising Bharat Summit. And it's wonderful to be joined by Boj Brenda of the World Economic Forum, a man who's been tracking global trade for decades now, and a man who has a pulse check on what is happening as far as the business community globally is concerned. Boj Brenda, many, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV 18 and on Network 18. It is a pleasure to have you here with us. Unfortunately, we have you joining us virtually. We would love to have you here with us in New Delhi. But let me start by asking you, Boj, what we've seen happen, especially since the 2nd of April, with the announcement of tariffs by President Trump, reciprocal measures being taken by different countries. As someone who's tracked global trade for decades now, is this the stuff of your nightmares, Boj?
No, thank you, and I wish I was there with you in New Delhi. It is true that we are facing unprecedented times. I would admit that in many ways, I'm glad I'm not the trade minister anymore. I could put it that way, because it is very challenging times. The largest economy in the world, the US, is almost 30% of the global GDP. With 5% of the global population. They have introduced no tariffs that are the highest ones in the US in a century. And no different countries then deal with it bilaterally. And it is a time where a lot is at stake for the global economy. That's for sure.
Well, yes, a lot is at stake, Boj, but, you know, when we were in Davos in January at the start of the year, President Trump did speak to the audience in Davos virtually. And while he had already held out the threat of tariffs, it seems to be the worst case scenario that's playing out. And if you look at the calculation, if you look at the tariff math, this isn't really reciprocal in the sense that we expected it to be. So what do you see as the impact and the implications on global trade? Is it too early to really make an assessment of how badly this is going to impact global growth?
So the discussion about reciprocity, you know, that's a political discussion. The reality, if you look just at the numbers, the US used to have tariffs around 3%, and now they will have tariffs with the latest proposal in the mid-20s. This is one of the highest, if not the highest, among all industrialized countries. So it is a major change. How this will influence the global economy depends also on what's happening in the coming weeks. We saw, for example, the stock market, the Nikkei index in Japan increased by 6% today because there are bilateral discussions between Japan as the third largest economy in the world and US as the largest to find ways to break this impasse. So I think we know more about this in a few weeks, but of course we need all the growth that is possible because we are not back on what was trend growth for decades. We're still lower than the trend growth, and there are so many challenges, so many jobs, so many opportunities that have to be created, especially in emerging economies and frontier markets.
Yes, well, speaking of opportunities as well as the road ahead, I want to build a little bit more on the retaliatory action and now the possible retaliatory action on China, with President Trump threatening another 50% tariff on China. China responding, saying that they will take countermeasures if the U.S. were to go forward with that. If President Trump goes through with the threat of additional 50% tariffs on China, which would take the total tariffs on China above 100%, Borge, what will that mean? How are you reading that?
This will all be speculation, so I don't want to go into that, because we will know the answer to this in a few weeks, at least most likely. But it is significant when the two largest economies in the world also are not seeing eye to eye on how to then deal with trade and investment between each other. So as I mentioned, the US economy is the largest, China is the second largest. Together, they're almost 45% of the global economy. So if we see a decoupling between these two economies, that is serious, because there are also areas where they depend on trading with each other. It is, though, important to underline that China